There are shows with psychics.
And there are shows with doctors.
But there's no show like The Psychic and the Doc.
Your practical paranormal power unleashed.
This show synthesizes the talents of world-class medium Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer,
and street smart spiritualist, behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Baccili. All subjects are on the table and no topic is taboo. Inspiration, insight,
action, and fun as Mark Anthony connects callers with loved ones in spirit.
In tandem with Dr. Pat's fresh, no-nonsense, street-smart, intuitive insights. And she is hilarious.
Extraordinary problems
require extraordinary solutions, which may come from this side
or the other side. This is The Psychic
and the Doc, and it starts now. Welcome, everybody, to The Psychic and the Doc here on the Transformation Network. I'm Mark Anthony, JD, Psychic Explorer, and I'm here with my esteemed and amazing co-host, the world-renowned behavioral psychologist, Dr. Pat Baccili. Dr. Pat is the founder of the Transformation Network and the host of the long-running and multiple award-winning The Dr. Pat Show. We have an amazing show tonight, Dr. Pat.
I know we do. Yeah. And I showed up as Billy Idol.
And you know what? You do Billy Idol better than Billy.
I really do. I can actually sing some of those. White face for a white wedding. I mean, we could get into that, but let's hold that for later.
Yeah, because we have a really special treat this episode. The name of this episode is Intuitive Development. And our special guest is Emmy Vadnais, who is a licensed occupational therapist, intuitive healer and coach, spiritual guide, teacher, consultant, and writer. And she helps people transform pain and anxiety to peace, joy, and she does so by helping her patients align with the divine. Emmy is the author of Intuitive Development: How to Trust Your Inner Knowing for Guidance with Relationships, Health, and Spirituality. Emmy is the founder and director of the Holistic OT community at holisticot.org, and that supports occupational therapists interested in or practicing integrative health, wellness, and prevention. She co-hosts and co-produces the New Thinking Aloud show on the YouTube channel with Jeffrey Mishlove, PhD, who I've been honored to meet, and I hold him in the highest regard. And this is at newthinkingaloud.com. Emmy is in private practice in St. Paul, Minnesota. Her website is Emmy Vadnais, which is VADNAIS.com. Emmy, welcome to The Psychic and the Doc.
Oh, I'm so excited to be with both of you. I just want to sit and just like soak up your good energy. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Yeah, Dr. Pat, you and Emmy have a lot of things in common because you help people in many of the same ways, don't you think?
You know, who knows how I got here? I just know that I've learned every once in a while, follow the breadcrumbs. And that's the short version of what we're going to talk about tonight, because, you know, how often have we heard growing up? Well, in my house, how often have we heard follow the breadcrumbs? But little did we know as kids that what we were talking about is what Emmy wrote about in her incredible book, right? Yeah. And I think we have, I did another interview today and with an amazing guy, and I love how we're pushing the boundaries, Emmy, and that's what you're doing. And somebody asked me, why do you think that is? Why now? Why do you think that is? And I used to make up answers. Now I just leave that question for you, Emmy. Like, why now? What is the energy that's happening that literally called you forward to step forward to create an incredible book, like a guidebook? It could be an app, so that we don't shut down humanity at the infancy and childhood age.
Well, I'm also, again, just so happy to be with both of you. And I know that you are both quite versed in intuition. So I don't know that I'll be sharing anything necessarily new with the two of you, but because you've been working in this field for decades yourselves. But I can only speak for myself that I was having experiences, a couple dreams actually. I dreamt of two of my nieces and one of my nephews. They came to me. They're called announcing dreams. You may know. Jeffrey Mishlove taught me that. They came to me when their mother was not pregnant or barely just a month pregnant. She didn't really have any biological indications. One time I left a message on her voicemail. Back then it was an answering machine in the 90s. She said, "Oh, I just got back from the doctor and I found out I'm pregnant." So I knew their sex, I knew their personality, who they would look like in the family. And so I was having these experiences that didn't make sense to me, that I knew because we think about there's a lot more evidence these days of near death experiencers because mainstream healthcare has extended life, and in some cases people are brought back to life, and so we definitely have learned more about the afterlife from a lot of NDEers. However, we don't always hear about the pre-birth or the pre-life. Of course, there's Christian Sundberg, who you both maybe know of, and we've had as a wonderful guest on New Thinking Aloud a few times, where some people can remember their pre-birth memories. But this was having a precognitive experience before the souls were actually here, even in their mother's womb, like just there. She hadn't had any ultrasounds or anything. So at any rate, that just really got my attention. And when you ask the question, why now? For me, I'm getting to answer that more fully, but for me, I was also experiencing burnout. I was a new occupational therapist. It's actually 30 years this month, right now,
Wow.
since I graduated from St. Catherine University in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'm located in next to Minneapolis, the Twin Cities. And I was working with skilled nursing facilities and really discovered I was doing end of life care. Didn't really get that at the time because I didn't have enough experience to work in the hospitals. And the productivity standards were getting much higher. So it sounds strange, but I even had to write a paper when I was in college of, is healthcare, is it a service or is it a business? And when you would tell the teacher, the professor, what you thought it was, they made you write in the opposite way. So I had to write about how
Exactly.
it was a business. And actually, it's both. And so when you say why now, I think about how the better the better and worse angels of humanity have expressed themselves. And I think that some of that corporate greed in healthcare was expressing
Mm.
itself in not great ways. And it was a meat grinder for me, and I got burned out. And I started experiencing anxiety, symptoms of, I guess you could say, depression, but it was burnout. Now there's a term, moral injury. So I wasn't really supported in my environment. And unfortunately, that's quite rampant in healthcare across all professions. Of course, there are some healthcare professionals who are quite happy, but not all of them. I did actually go back and work as an OT, and did find some positions that I enjoyed, and bringing integrative health back into that. But the holistic integrative health, formerly known as complementary alternative medicine, was just
Oh,
in my
yeah.
heart. And so I expanded more into that. But I would have to go into meditation to really ascertain more why now. But I think that some aspects of humanity have gotten perhaps less in touch with our true authentic nature. And perhaps maybe this is a course correction of humanity to really come together. Because for me, I actually was having anxiety then if I were to try to go back into those settings, and I couldn't really work in the way that my consciousness expanded into. And so, for example, after a day at the skilled nursing facility, there were two physical therapists who came in and started talking about energy healing and how you can help somebody without physically touching them. This was back in the late 90s. And I thought, that's really hard to believe, but these sound like really credible women, and they really sound really confident. So then I started taking energy healing classes. And of course, it was a Qigong energy healing, as I'm sure both of you know, and many listeners, that it was that intuition is the primary way that you learn, teach, self-cultivate and assist others was using your intuition to assist them. And so my intuition just started growing leaps and bounds. And that's how, for me personally, that happened. And, you mentioned breadcrumbs at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about around this time, I really didn't have people to mentor me and the ways that I was working. Of course, I met some people in like holistic, formerly known as alternative medicine, but I felt like I had a lamp, kind of like the Hermit tarot card in front of me, just shining a light on the couple feet in front of me, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but it was intuition, which of course intuition can mean many things. It could also be, some people might say it's a higher self, it could be guides, depending on a person's belief systems or experiences, angels or God or however somebody relates to that with. And and so for me, over the years, then I became a beacon of light for other practitioners and other people, just like you two have and others, that I had no idea I was going to do. And I had no idea I'd write this book. So that's just a little introduction into why
Yeah.
now
Wow.
that comes to
It,
mind.
you brought up an interesting point about near-death experiences and also your own interaction with the spirits of a niece and nephew before they were born.
Mhm.
So would it be fair to say that your position is that consciousness pre-exists the physical body and is not a localized phenomenon?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Of course, because I know Jeffrey Mishlove and other fabulous people such as yourselves. He won you may know, the Bigelow Institute for
Yeah.
Consciousness Studies essay competition for the best evidence for the continuation of consciousness in the afterlife. And yes, so it's just a joy to be on that program and to talk with people such as yourselves because we get bathed in these experiences. And I'm sure both of you have also experience that personally and when you talk to so many folks. So yeah, it really showed me that hey, there's something going on here that's much bigger. Like I was
Yes.
raised Catholic until my parents divorced and it felt very impersonal other than when we would shake each other's hands and say peace be with you during the service.
My
Uh,
favorite part. I was raised Catholic, as
yeah,
was
that was
Dr.
your favorite
Pat.
part too?
Yeah, is may peace be with you, because that's where we're actually connecting. Because everything else is very structured and rote. And with all due respect, and I do love Pope Leo and I loved Pope Francis. I think these last two popes are just really, baboon. But it's so a reading from the book of blah blah blah, and it's blah 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 blah. And it's when you have a priest, or if it's not even Catholic, it could be any type of minister or a mom who talks in a sermon and connects with people without being judgmental and sermonizing, people who uplift.
Yeah.
And may peace be with you, to connect with people you don't even know. I
Mhm.
think that makes all the
Yeah.
difference.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, as a child, I felt like I think I would tear up actually. And then the Lord's Prayer I also really liked as well, but it felt very impersonal to me because I grew up, I mean, I loved the beautiful Catholic, the cathedral in St. Paul here, just a couple miles down the
Hmm.
road. And I think there's a lot of spiritual tenets, so I don't want to completely, if those listening really get a lot of sustenance from that. For me, it was too patriarchal and I didn't have a personal relationship with the spirit. And so having, 3 out of 3 with 2 nieces and 1 nephew just showed me there's something like, hey, this is undeniable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to comment on something in the book. You cover this in your book, creativity, problem solving, and innovation. And I just want to start with this. 2 things happened to me that got my show pulled,
Mm.
in 23 years, right? There's not a lot that you can pull a show like mine, right? One was I mentioned ivermectin as a solution for COVID, prior to them figuring out it was. So they pulled that show.
Wow.
Uh, but the other one was when I said all inventions, all discoveries, and I really meant this, all inventions, all discoveries,
Mhm.
all innovations, every new idea was born from intuition.
Mm.
And they pulled the show. So don't pull this show, folks, because we're talking about the book here, just y'all that are monitoring this. But I said it because I couldn't find anything that was written that wasn't that. And I'm very naive and I'm very innocent, and I reflect upon this. But I was also influenced by working at Bell Labs with Arno Penzias, the Big Bang guy.
Wow.
And, you know, when you watch discoveries where he's not sure, there's rats in the satellite, I still don't know, like a discovery where intuition wasn't involved. But you nail this when you talk about this in your book and you talk about the research. So talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, my book I wrote, so I went to school as an occupational therapist, even though over the years I'm working less and less as an occupational therapist and more as an intuitive healer and spiritual guide and so forth. But I was trained how to read research papers and how to write papers like many people who go to college, but we had to learn how to write papers. And actually I double majored in psychology at the time and how to write, and we actually did some research or duplicated some research studies when I was in college. And so I wrote my book. I actually thought about going to get an advanced degree, or I could write my book. And my intuition told me to write my book and get it out to the world. And as it was, like Jeffrey Mishlove wrote the foreword for my book. Dean Radin, the chief scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, endorsed it. And so I don't think being here talking with you two beautiful souls, like all the wonderful things that have happened would not have happened had I chose to go to
Yep.
that, at least for me, and maybe someday
Yeah.
that'll still happen. But I wrote my book as basically a dissertation, if you will. And so every chapter has, I don't know, maybe about an average, maybe a dozen sources. And so the research shows, I can't exactly recall right at the moment. I know, and I
Well,
had to learn
I'll
how.
tell you what I drew. I'll tell you what I hit on. I studied with Mahali. So
I was just going to
when,
say his name, Mihai
yeah,
Csikszentmihalyi, right?
yeah, Mihai. And, you know, those
Yes.
of us that studied with him, we called him Mick, or whatever you want to call him. He
Yes.
didn't
I was just
matter.
going to
I
say
called
his.
him Mr. Flow. Of course, he didn't take it as insulting, but everybody else did. But you really bring that to the forefront in the book. And I have to tell you, I'm really thrilled that you do that,
Thank
because
you.
there aren't many people that write about this that give him credit for anything,
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
right?
Right when you said his name, I was just about to say, because I actually recorded my book as an audiobook and I narrated it, so I had to learn how to pronounce his
Did you
name.
get
And I was
it?
just
Did you
about to
get the
say
name?
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. It looks like Mahali
It does look like
Csikszentmihalyi or
Mahali.
whatever, something.
It's not Mahali.
No, it's not. And I was just going to say that, and actually, I think Jeff interviewed him on Thinking Aloud many years ago, the
Yep.
original public television program, that he wrote the book Flow and he did
Yes, he
research.
did.
And so the research actually shows that the more you are creative, the more your intuition comes online. And the more that you
Right.
are connecting to your intuition, the more that your creativity can come online. So it's a really beautiful kind of feed forward feedback loop. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing Jill Boltley Taylor, who wrote My
Yeah.
Stroke of Insight, who then went on to write a book, Whole Brain Living, and she talks about the different parts of the brain, even though it's not just about the brain, but how we can, as I'm sure you both know, and many people listening, we can get so caught up in our thoughts,
Ugh.
judgments, limiting beliefs, conditioning, society. Like, oh, I have to go to college and get a degree, which I didn't have to. I wanted to, and I'm glad I still did that path. But we have these conditioned beliefs, and so we can get stuck in that and undervalue, right? Because science, technology,
Yeah.
is it engineering, math, STEM, like all that is really wonderful for innovation. Although with AI, right, we're now at a kind of a crisis point. That's a whole other conversation. But we undervalue as a society those creative expressions, those abilities to get into those states, to just daydream and look out the window, to I mean, some people will actually record their dreams, but if, for example, if anybody listening, if you've never done this before and you just start writing down your dreams, and after a couple weeks or a month, you might get some surprising insight into your life. You might start finding that you either get precognitive information, or your life starts getting maybe more crystal clear. So there's a lot you can do with that part of yourself that isn't always recognized.
That's a really good point. I like you're saying about recording dreams, because dreams, no matter how much we've been studying them,
Mm.
sleep consumes a third of our lives,
Mm.
yet we know so little about it. and navigating the world of dreams. And when you start recording your dreams, you'll begin to see patterns in them.
Yes.
And I think that's a very important point. I also want to put out for all the listeners 1-800-930-2819. This is a call-in show. You're going to get a triple shot of healing and intuitive insights tonight. 1-800-930-2819. So, Emmy, we're talking briefly about consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
How do you define consciousness?
Oh, that's how do I define it? Well, I've had the pleasure of asking. I just recently asked Julia Mossbridge this on a conversation where we talked about her research on time. And well, there's the simple of we are aware. And I think that that's probably the most fundamental of consciousness is was it Descartes who said, I think, therefore I am?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think just that simple awareness piece. However, we take ourselves as this individual. Most people take themselves as this individual being. And I think that it's probably a connector, perhaps information, and at a very, very even deeper level that isn't always discussed. I would say it's even love, like at the core, like pure consciousness. And the Buddhists have a term for that, which is even, I was just reading about this, like one level up from like intuition of just like pure being, which is a sense of oneness that when we're in that state, we recognize that even though we think that we perceive ourselves as living in this physical world, everything is all interconnected, and we think our consciousness is just up here. But for example, I've also spoke with the wonderful psychiatrist Thomas Verney, who wrote The Secret Life of the Unborn Child. You may be familiar with him. And he wrote a book, and I believe he did like 7 years of research and found that consciousness is everywhere in our bodies. So it isn't just through our eyes. But I don't know. What do you think, Mark? Does that satisfy your?
No, it's an ongoing debate in all of our circles is what is consciousness. And I developed the electromagnetic soul theory, which I think we'll be talking about when I'm on your show, New Thinking Aloud.
New Thinking Aloud soon.
Yeah, because the EMS is that our consciousness is pure electromagnetic energy, but then again, so is everything else on the subatomic level. So we are, while the consciousness is housed in this physical body, it's so much more than the physical body.
Yes.
And this takes into account quantum coherence. And there have been new discoveries in Australia about quantum entanglement and how now matter can actually be in two places at once. Anyway, that's getting into a whole nother talk. But
yes, well that makes a lot of sense. That's how we can know about each other across what we perceive as across space and time. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's also how remote viewing works.
Yeah.
You know, when people project their consciousness to see what's happening in another, room or another part of the world, it all has to do with quantum coherence, which is an extension of quantum entanglement theory. And all of that ties into my EMS, electromagnetic soul theory. So consciousness, it's very simple and yet very complex at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a Zen answer, I guess.
Well, yeah, I love what you're saying because, for example, we had Robert Temple on as a guest, and I think he wrote a book, A New Science of Heaven, where he argues that everything is plasma at the core. There's like the energy, and then people are talking about plasma. Of course, there's dark matter, but that really just means that people don't fully understand it. I'm excited to talk with you to hear more. And I definitely, I think we all know there's more. Those of us here, the three of us, and those probably listening, recognize there's more than what we just perceive as like being inside of these skin suits. As was it Alan Watts who said that, or I forget who said that?
Yeah, I mean, part of this too is first of all, I love the way you embed science research into the guidance you give us on intuition. And I think it's so important. I did work with Arno Penzias, but I was a young teenager, and many of the things he said to me made sense to me. Of course, I didn't know that he was going to be the Big Bang guy. I mean, he just brought in bagels, so was it. But later on, and he's the one person I regret not getting to the table to interview when I could have. And he went on to talk about, in his discovery of the cosmic microwave, um, he went on to talk about, he views intuition as a fundamental, albeit non-rational, of course you have to say that if you're him, I guess, guide in scientific discovery. And he goes on to write about, it's interesting the language this man used in his quotes and his dialogues, because he goes on to categorize scientific intuition. He uses that phrase. And yet here we are in a world, Mr. Nobel, Big Bang Theory, scientific intuition, and it's like we have to claw the doors down to say the I word.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but I have a few thoughts.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I'd like to
go
hear
right
your
ahead,
thought
Emmy.
on
well,
that one.
thank you for sharing that. Well, intuition is what we perceive as like the inner part of ourselves, right? So that's what I was saying about society valuing. Again, I'm all for people enjoying sports and having a good time at their sports games, but we value, like, look at the sports stadiums and look at how full they are and how much money people are spending on those kinds of activities, or going to different events or traveling, which are all lovely. I'm not saying people shouldn't be doing those things. I'm not what I am saying is that, and Jeffrey Mishlove actually says this in the foreword of my book, that our culture is out of balance, that we are very focused on the external world and not as much on the internal. And of course, when we get into, I'll just say, the science of the yin and yang. I don't know, just because you said science of intuition,
That's
also the
right.
science of yin and yang, which is the
That's
logo
right.
of New Thinking Aloud. And we have the rainbow yin yang that came to Jeffrey Mishlove one day, that we have the yin, which is that inner receptive. It's more of the feminine qualities, not necessarily in gender, although it can be. And then we have, that's more that inward, and then the external, outward. And so there's a lot of value on the external world, and I think quite honestly, that's why I'm so grateful to be a guest of yours, both of yours today, because I just wish if more people recognize they have this internal compass inside of them, that if they stop running from themselves, because I had my own past trauma and it was very difficult for me to sit and be quiet. My teacher was like, Emmy, you have to meditate. You need to get to a daily meditation practice. I'm like, how am I going to do that? And then finally, over the years, I was able to do that, that we can dive past those limiting thoughts and beliefs and emotions. Sometimes they serve us, sometimes they're there, sometimes fear is there, and anger and all that to protect us. But sometimes, in a lot of cases, maybe most of the cases, it's really because of past unresolved trauma or grief or low self-esteem. For me, it's been a journey toward greater self-love and self-acceptance. So a lot of people who come to me, that's also, I think, what's happening for them. And if we can sit and be with ourselves and be comfortable with ourselves, then we can open to that whole world of that greater consciousness that is sort of what we perceive as sort of like our little I, but also the greater I as well. And then we can access
That's a
a
great
whole
way of
world of
putting it.
information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a great way of putting it. Let's go to a short break. And I want to once again tell the callers, the listeners, this is a call-in show, 1-800-930-2819. And Emmy, before we go, how do people get hold of you? Let everyone know your website.
And get the book.
Thank you. Well, the easiest thing would be just to go to emmyvadnais.com. So EMMYVADNAIS.com. I have a contact page there if they're interested in any sessions. And then I have book information there. And also it's available on Amazon in print, in a Kindle ebook, and also an audiobook.
All right.
And then New Thinking Aloud is the other one, because we New Thinking Aloud. I know you're going to go to a break, but that's another place.
Yeah, newthinkingaloud.com. Okay. Yes. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Dr. Pat and I and our special guest, Emmy Vadnais, will be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Anthony, author of The Afterlife Frequency. But don't expect a dry treatise. This book educates, entertains, and reads like a juicy novel.
Joining us today is psychic lawyer Mark Anthony. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I don't think there's another person on the planet anywhere who shares this guy's resume.
He's been on Coast to Coast, the radio show with me for years. He's a psychic lawyer, but he's the real deal.
This book also provides hope in coping with grief, crime, murder, PTSD, and survivor's guilt. The Afterlife Frequency teaches you my 4-step raft technique. Recognize spirit contact, accept it as real, feel it without fear, and trust the message.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I want to welcome you to the Real Healing Institute. This is your invitation to my spiritual circles, where your energy is read, your life receives channeled clarity, and your soul is mirrored by others walking this path with you. Come and be seen, guided, and activated. These spiritual circles are sacred containers, personal energy readings, channeled guidance for your life, and a conscious community where insights flow and souls remember who they are. Visit therealhealinginstitute.com to sign up.
If you've been journeying with Shakti Durga on the Mystery School podcast, you're invited to something very special this July 2026. Shakti Durga invites you to Carrying the Sacred Fire retreat in the Himalayan foothills of India. This retreat is a journey into illumination, refinement, and embodiment through fire ceremony, meditation, and sacred transmission. If you feel the call, visit shantimission.org to learn more and reserve your place.
Are you constantly triggered by your mother? Do you feel that no matter what you've tried, you cannot break out of your repeating patterns that are keeping you stuck? Do you feel sad, angry, or frustrated for no apparent reason? From Birth into Brilliance is a profound exploration of how our birth experiences can deeply influence various aspects of our lives. I emphasize that the way we were born and the environment we were born into affects everything from our emotional health to our physical coordination and mental clarity. My approach combines ancestral healing, reprogramming the neural pathways in your brain, and energy work to help you rebalance and break free from limiting beliefs and repetitive patterns. Are you ready to dig deep? For more information, visit shannonbtb.com. That's shannonbtb.com.
To the Psychic in the Doc here on the Transformation Network. I'm Mark Anthony, JD, Psychic Explorer. I'm here with the amazing Dr. Pat Baccili, and we have a very special guest, Emmy Vadnais, who is an occupational therapist, spiritual teacher, health coach. I mean, she helps people connect with their intuition, align with the divine. We're having a really great conversation, but at first I want to let everyone know what I'm doing. I've got a lot of things going on. If you please go to my website, I invite you to go to afterlifefrequency.com. And on Saturday, June 13th, I have a light circle, which is an online event limited to 6 people. Tickets are going fast. You can sign up for the light circle there. Everyone will receive a reading and messages from the collective consciousness. I've got other events as well, and you can find all those in the calendar of events at afterlifefrequency.com. Kindly sign up for my newsletter. Dr. Pat, unstuckable.com. Tell everyone about your website, what you got cooking.
Yeah, for those of you out there, you can go over to unstuckable.com. Pretty soon you're going to see the Dr. Pat website come up. But the most important place to go is ttrnetwork.com. That's our flagship channel. If you want to know more about the world of human potential, go to the transformationnetwork.com, because, you know, intuitively, I was led to trademark that last year. And looking back now, what a blessing that was. I had no idea that if we allow intuition to get big, then bigger and bigger, We don't have any limits. I don't know, Emmy, is that true?
Oh, yeah. I think it's something we can swim in every day if we allow ourselves to do so. I have had the pleasure of speaking with Robert Thurman, who's a good friend of His Holiness the
Oh,
Dalai
yeah.
Lama, and maybe you two have spoken with him.
Yeah.
And I learned that the Dalai Lama, I believe, means oceanic teacher. And just the other day, my teacher actually taught me how to make my own intuitive cards that I just used with pencil. This is my second deck that I actually use colored pencil, got really fancy. And just this morning, I was asking some questions. I mean, I go into meditation and do inner listening, but sometimes I like to pull cards and so forth. And I have different store-bought decks I like to play with, different personalities. But I kept getting the ocean card, and it's so interesting. And I feel like maybe it was prepping us for our conversation today. But yes, I think the sky or the ocean is the limit with this. And I believe we're all here for a purpose, right? I don't think I'm not the only one who believes that. And so your intuition can really help you align with your own soul's purpose, because a lot of people feel really lost, and some people feel like they don't want to be here anymore. They're not making a difference, so they don't matter. But if you can connect with your intuition, it can help you align with your own inner compass, your own path, and also help you make decisions and choices in your lives. And I think that that's one of the greatest tools I have found, is that, like what you did with your trademarking, you somehow connect. Like, how did you connect with your intuition? Did you do inner listening and meditation,
No,
or did you use
no.
a pendulum, or?
Oh, okay. So here's the next question for you.
Sure.
Something really bad happened with my old company and my old brand. I say bad because the public, to really get into a very philosophical, things happen. Things happen to people, and that happened to me. And I didn't realize, why am I not starting a company called the Transformation Network? But I have a great friend who's a trademark attorney person. And ignorance has been a gift for me in my life. I'm not kidding. Not knowing, I don't think I would have ever applied to school if I'd have known. But I went through and I looked up all the human potential categories. There's like 100 of them. And I put them all in a trademark, and I sent it to Jamaica. And I said, this is what I want to do. She said, this is a lot of areas. I said, that's right, because the Transformation Network is the human potential network. Media is just one piece. So she files it. She doesn't say no. She doesn't say you don't stand a chance. 82 categories, and they came back and asked for exhibits, specimens. We had 130 specimens to give them because we had been doing this for 23 years, but I didn't get the intuitive hit until 2025 to do that. Now, you're the expert that knows how things show up when they do. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
But the fact is, when the idea came, you have got to flip the switch and do something about it. And I think that's the disconnect, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And a trademark is an interesting one, because on one hand it can really serve people, on another hand it can sometimes it worked for you. We'll just say it works for you. You're right. So intuition is getting information, receiving information, or kind of getting into that oceanic stream, or that oneness of consciousness. Some people talk about it basically like the Akashic records. And then it's a matter of, okay, you have the information. Now you have a choice. Do you want to act on it?
Yeah.
And some people act on it and some people don't. And this gets into timing in life, where, like, for example, when I had my first deck, I've been married for almost 20 years, 17 years, but with my husband for over 20 years. But there was a time that we had split up, and I was asking my intuitive cards about our relationship, and I got like an arrow, and then the next card was a house. Now, this was when I was living in an apartment. I now own my own home. I've been here for over 20 years. And I thought, well, I guess I'm just supposed to go and live my own life and get my own house. But then in retrospect, years later, I realized, oh, this was telling me, like, go do you, Emmy. That's when I worked as an integrative medicine practitioner at Abbott at a major hospital in Minneapolis. I had the financial resources to buy my own home, and I'm really proud of that. Then we got back together. So it's just interesting how,
Yeah.
because people will use intuition or psychic abilities also to want to, quote, predict the future. And there's debate, of course, like also in the remote viewing communities. Like I've talked with Daz Smith, you probably know him, and he talks about how he's 80+% accurate, 87, maybe even close to 90%. But when you do the future, he said he's like 60 some, because
Yeah.
there's different variables, and there's that's the
Well,
one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's different ways of interpreting it too, because always, no matter how many times Dr. Pat and I say, I'm not a fortune teller.
Yeah.
Okay. People call in, I want to know about my future. Okay.
Yes.
And I understand that because, I'm a medium. I communicate with spirits, and spirits are capable of seeing future events. However, the way the information is presented, this isn't Gemini or Google or Alexa. Okay. This isn't texting or instant messaging. And many times there can be a metaphor. And that's what Dr. Pat is just fantastic at, is helping people understand that. Like people say, well, I want some clarity. Okay. And it's like, once again, this isn't texting or instant messaging. Like, for example, I was doing a reading for someone, and the message it was back in January, that the things are going to change for her in April. So I get an email, April hasn't worked out. Everything's the same. I'm going for interviews. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I had my assistant message her and said, well, perhaps the change is an internal one. Perhaps it is realizing that, yes, you're going on interviews. Yes, you're looking for this. Yes, you're still in a bad relationship. Why? Because you're doing the same thing over and over and over. So now it's time to look inward and make a change. Because a lot of people, if they hear, things are going to change by a certain date, some people sit around waiting for ding, all of a sudden it happens. And it's like, that is not necessarily how it happens.
We need to row the boat as well, and it's an inside job. And that's why when I'm guiding people, we can certainly look at likely tendencies. That's how I was taught for the future. However, we also have to do our part, and that's just the tendency maybe for that day, but we also need to participate in our lives and not just sit back and wait for things to come to us.
What about the, I told you the story about the PhD. I think I told you guys during the break, right? I'm 17. Okay. But how did I get from there to here? We have to do things. Just about every piece of reading you read that's spiritual, including the Bible, it says faith without works is like dead. And so you have to do and represent yourself. Clearly for me, it took me another 10 years to go to undergraduate school. It took me 13 years to get the undergraduate degree. And if I didn't lose my job after a protest I made, I was an executive by then, I wouldn't have gone back. But we have to understand who we are. And you touch upon this quite a bit in the book, but you also reference quite a bit of research to show that point. And I think to Mark's point, most of the people we get that call in, they are hurt. And, the way Mark works with them is incredible. But I'm the one that comes in and say, you know what I'm thinking about the strawberries he mentioned, right? Because I come from a very practical place. And what you've done in your book is you've blended both beautifully.
Thank you.
That's important.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And what I love about supporting people with their intuition, I mean, on one hand, yes, I can do intuitive readings for people, and I do that for folks. However, I really also like to nurture people's intuition, right? To help people learn how to fish so that they can do this themselves. But a really powerful way to access intuition or to have it support you is, what will help me with XYZ area of my life? What do I need to know about what can I do to improve my health? What am I missing? What's a blind spot around this relationship that I'm in if the things aren't going well? So that you can get a big picture, you can zoom into little details, and you can get all the information you really want. And for me, I'm a sun sign Capricorn, so I'm very Mars and Taurus, so I was very determined.
Your sun sign's Capricorn, my moon is Capricorn.
Oh, we have a sun moon conjunction probably.
There we go.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And so I was very determined to understand this because I thought, well, why did I have this dream? And is there a way? In fact, I just had Colette Baron-Reed on, a wonderful oracle card expert. You may be friends
Yes,
with,
we
know
love
her.
Colette.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she talks about the cards as creating intentional synchronicities. And I just love that because, of course, we can have spontaneous synchronicities, but it's a way to get information that we already know inside of ourselves if we're working with a tool like cards or a pendulum, or we can also learn to go into meditation and then play with it. Like I like to say to people, if you're not sure what movie to watch, maybe look at the covers and use your intuition. And I have different exercises on how to know how you might listen, how you might actually intuit, because everybody's slightly different. And then see how the movie turns out. Or as we know, the classic one is if you get a phone call or when you hear the ding for your text, who is that? And then you can start playing with it, because the biggest thing is that people say they don't know how they intuit and they have a hard time trusting it. And so I'm trying to really bridge that gap because we're all born with this.
I'm hearing a lot of important guidelines when the phone rings. Intuit. See, we are naturally able to pick up on these things, but in the 21st century, we're so inundated with technological distractions. People put earbuds in when they're running, working out. People are terrified to be bored, so they're always playing with their phone or this or that, and so what's happening is people are blocking their natural intuitive self with technological gadgets. And Emmy, would you agree that one of the first steps to intuitive development is let's take a time out from those and just listen to what's going through our brain. Let's listen to the impulses and the sensations coming to us. What do you think about that?
I 1,000,000% completely agree with you. And like I said earlier, I was running from myself. I had so much anxiety. I was having panic attacks. It was very difficult for me to be with myself. Now I have a morning yoga practice and I can actually cultivate being in a more calm state. It took several years to do that, but it wasn't like I had to meditate and eventually in 2 years I did it. It grew over time and I was able to get, as people might say, those intuitive hits. Otherwise I would have stopped, long ago.
Let me ask you a question. You said something that just really ding, rang a bell. You said I was like terrified to be by myself.
Be with myself. Yeah.
Be with myself. Why?
Oh, I think for me, I was just not aware of how my past traumatic experiences, shall we say, were impacting me.
Yep.
And I didn't know how to be with my emotions and my thoughts.
Yep.
And I think that's not uncommon for a lot of people, which is why people say they have a hard time meditating. And that's why I really encourage people to have a meditation teacher if they can, or at least follow somebody or read reputable books, because those parts that we tend to suppress or repress can come to the surface in meditation. And so that's why I have typically over the years called myself an intuitive healer, because I feel like they often go hand in hand, that for us to really, it's consciousness development. I would also say it's not always about healing, but if a person is finding that they have so much fear that they need to go and get a coffee, or they have to put on a music, or they have to call somebody, then that's like, hey, what's going on there? And there's probably, well, definitely a part of them that needs nurturing and attention and love. And that's also why I painted this heart on my book. It took me 100 times. Thank you so much. It took me 100 times to get the heart how I saw it in my mind, but is that I really feel like intuition is synonymous with love, because I feel like it's going to guide us in the best way forward. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, Emmy, it does for me, because look, I've been 37 years in recovery myself. I was born in the world. My mom was an addict alcoholic, so I was born that. But what I've learned in life experience and since the show and the network, I have a different approach to the people I work with, because people always ask, why can't you just stop drinking? You see, drinking isn't always the problem, or why can't you just stop using? It's what's underneath that. Yeah. And until I faced that myself through one of the most difficult times of my life, and I just said no more, I had to face all of that. And you see, one of the things I love about the new twist in programs is when you have a problem, you have to call somebody because most of your life you held all that in. The shame, the guilt, the not knowing, the pain, you know, my pain of childhood trauma and abuse. And where does it go? And in my case, I didn't know about meditation, so I just drank and used until I didn't.
Wow.
Until I intuitively one day, and I'm telling you, it was intuitive to stop.
Good for you. What a blessing, and what a beacon of light you are for so many. So yeah, I feel like intuition, because it is that part of us that is it is our breath. It is our whatever you want to call it, who we are. It's the core of who we are. But because we sometimes have a hard time fully loving and accepting all of ourselves, we also reject the part, like people often would talk like shadow work. People would say, "Oh, so many people are repressing the dark." Well, I think a lot of people repress the light, and I'm a living example, because for years I did that. I was not fully embracing that part of me, and so I did both at the same time, and then I was able to really then my intuitive gifts really grew tremendously.
Yeah, I love this because look, Catholics, three of us have that background, right, y'all? Okay, but then my dad remarried and I got introduced to Southern Baptist, and you know, which is the current equivalent of Joel Osteen and Joyce Meyer right now. But what's funny about this is I went to a spiritual Christian therapist once right after the recovery. And this was the only time I went to see him. So I'm just going to paraphrase that. And I went to see him. He gave me the Bible and he told me to read anything I want to read. So I read, guess what I read? The book of Revelations. So I write the back, like the book of Revelations, right? Out of everything in the book, I read that. There's something about, so I went back to him and it was such an interesting conversation. I remember it. The dark shadow is over you. What is it? And I'm like, dude, it's in the Bible. What are you saying? But you see, we want to repress. Do you know who's not repressing that side of us right now? Hollywood. You can't make millions of dollars without letting that genie out of the box. And television series like Three Body Problem. Hello. Who even understands what that is? But what are the gazillion million people watching it? Because there's intuition, because there's consciousness in it. But what you've done is you've actually taken the conversation to a new level.
Well, thank you so much.
It's very refreshing.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I agree with you about Hollywood, and I think that's why we all like stories, right? Like archetypes. We love, if we can't talk about sex and money the way we want to, let's watch a movie about it or a show about it or have art explain it. I also just want to briefly say that I don't want to sound like somebody has to go and heal all their childhood wounds to be successful with their intuition, because I think you can do both at the same time.
Parallel.
But I just am offering that to have it, I mean, I don't know if this is, there are different people have different experiences with their psychic intuitive gifts, but for me, that's what was necessary. So some, you know, like Mark, that might not have been the case for you, for example. And I just want to offer that people can strengthen their intuition, even if they go to listen to this conversation, read one of our books, or just maybe go to a day workshop and maybe work with somebody for a while. You will start getting experiences. I don't want to sound like it's way off in the distance.
But don't you both think it's more like a dance?
Yeah.
Don't you think it's more like a dance between intuition, hard work, intuition, trauma growth, do you see what I'm saying? It's more like this little dance you're doing between your childhood, your trauma, and intuition. And at some point, they start to work together, I think, right?
Agreed. And I really like what you said about you don't have to heal all your childhood traumas. You know, we have to also realize that, yes, a lot of the childhood and early adult traumas are horrible, but those are also part of what makes us who we are.
For sure.
And that we are the sum total of all of our decisions and experiences and reactions in the past. So you can look back and say, why did I fall in love with that person? It was a disaster. Why did I do that? That was stupid. Why did I do that? Because you did. And what you've learned from that has made you, right, because if you grew up in a bubble where everything was wonderful and fantastic, really, who does that? Okay.
Yeah, in order for me to work with people, I had to go through this myself. Otherwise, I couldn't hold space for them. So I'm unique in that regard. Everybody's different. So I know we just have a little time left. I don't know
We
if
got
you
about
had.
1 minute. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Go ahead, Emmy.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I didn't know if there was a caller or anybody who had any, or if
They sent us a message. The
okay.
callers sent us a message. They said there were no callers tonight because this dialogue is what we needed to hear. Thank you all.
My goodness.
Well, all right. See, we have such a cool audience. So
Thank you, Derek.
Everybody.
Thank you, cool audience.
Peace and love. Love that.
This is what people needed to hear, because this is helping people look back at their traumas and saying, okay, that was then, and here I am now.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, get Amy's book, because I'm not kidding when I say it's different. And I've read a lot of books in 23 years, but this book really hit me where I live. And that is the blending, as Penzia said, the blending of science and spirituality, the blending of information and next steps, the blending of faith and forward movement. And I think you did that so beautifully, honoring intuition in a way where we can finally start to get rid of the guilt and shame around it.
Oh yeah, it's a superpower that we can all embrace, and
That's
you know,
a t-shirt.
get support for your trauma. Yeah, get support for your trauma, because that'll just make life even better, and then your intuition will even soar more, and then maybe we all can sing Kumbaya together. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Either that or or better yet, we could really sing a really sad song like Break It To Me Gently by Juice Newton, and we all cry. Thank you so much.
The songs.
Oh my God, all the songs, all the time. Again, website. How do we get the book? How do we find out more about you? I know we got to go.
EmmyVadnais.com, and there's information there. And it's been such a joy being with everybody, you and all the listeners. Thank you so much, and love and blessings to everybody.
And thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Dr. Pat. And we'll be back next week. Same Transformation Network time and place. And Dr. Pat and I will be taking your calls. Good night. And to all of you, many blessings.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into The Psychic and the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Baccili, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on The Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. That's TransformationTalkRadio.com. And don't forget, we're also live face-to-face on Facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio.